Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank ACCA, CFS Society, sir, and the British Deputy High Commission for organizing this particular event and inviting me to share my thoughts with you. What I would like to do is to divide my remarks in 4 different audiences on the value of ethics and how they interact and are linked with each other. Because we tend to think about ethics as something additional to whatever you are doing. But my submission is that ethical values have to be embedded not only in your mission statement, but in the actual practice day to day. That means you have to walk the talk, rather than pretend that by celebrating these kind of events or having a particular code of ethics and tick marking all the compliances, you have actually done your job. I beg to differ with that approach. I wanted ethics to be ingrained in your day-to-day practice as a government official, as a private professional, or as an employee of a firm. So I'll divide this into 4 parts. First, what is the rationale for ethics at the higher macro level? Now, we all knew that it was physical capital and labor and land which were the factors of production for economic growth. Then we realized that despite that, we were not able to unravel the large residual which was unexplained. So people went in from labor to human capital, and governance became another factor of production. Even that was inadequate, and therefore people went in to have another additional factor, which is social capital. And a lot of people have talked about social capital in an oblique way, but it is actually the trust among the individuals who are carrying out exchange of goods and services. In countries where social capital is high, you trust the people with whom you are transacting business. Therefore, your transaction cost goes down. Where the trust is lacking or is inadequate at that level, you have too complex documents. I mean, if you want to see what the banks have such a thick document which you have to sign. You don't know what you're signing, but that is to create a situation where if there is a litigation, they can use those documents against you. That is, in my view, an imperfect substitute for social capital or trust. You're actually adding to the cost of doing business by doing that. So social capital has a role to play in the economic growth of any country at the macro level. So we must realize that it's not by creating infrastructure or human capital or machinery and equipment, we come to the conclusion that this is what is going to do the trick. The trick is that you have to bring in social capital. And China is a very good example that the litigation as compared to its population is one of the lowest. Japan has more engineers per capita compared to the US, which has more lawyers per capita. And that shows you the two different sides of the social capital. And Japan, as you know, is one of the most efficient producers, and this is also the case of China. So macro level, we have to have social capital. In Pakistan, unfortunately, we are so much in the blame game that our social capital has not only eroded, but in my view, it has gone to the negative side of the curve. So the government blames the private sector blames the government, the civil society blames both the government and the private sector. And if you listen to the talk shows from 8 to 11, you will find a validation of this particular, hypothesis which I have put together. I haven't come across a country which believes so strongly in self-flagellation and negativity and cynicism. These are antitheses of social capital. So the reason we are not making any progress is because we are an untrustworthy nation. The Balochis don't like the Punjabis don't like the Muhajirs don't like the Pakhtuns, and we are always engrossed in these kind of battles, which is putting at the macro level us down. You must have seen a lot of analysis where the people say, oh, investment is not coming in and therefore we are not progressing. But investment is propelled by the trust and by the configuration that people would not take us for a ride. Overseas Pakistanis have invested in real estate property here. And when they come here, they have to run from pillar to post because they have been illegally occupied by their own relatives who are refusing to vacate. So there is now a complete drying up of capital from overseas Pakistanis to the real estate or building sector. My second audience, which plays a great role in ethical values and practices, is the government or the public sector. Now all of you are familiar with the World Bank 6 governance indicators. I think this is a very well informed audience. But just to recapitulate, what are these? Voice and accountability, political stability, rule of law, government effectiveness, control of corruption, and regulatory quality. Now if you take these 6 indicators, and I leave it to your judgment as to where we stand against each of these indicators. Our governance has actually been sliding down. And I have proven in my book that there's a strong correlation between the governance indicators and the quality of institutions. So if you have robust institutions, then the quality of governance improves and these indicators improve. And that is where the public sector comes in. And you can judge for yourself against each indicator whether we are sliding down. I'm not talking of the absolute values. I'm talking of the trend line. Are we sliding down as compared to where we were in 2007, for example? We had very good score on Transparency International, on the World Bank governance indicators, on the World Competitiveness indicators. And if you look from there, it is a downward slide. So that's the situation of our government or public sector, where these indicators don't look so good, and therefore again, there is lack of trust, or I would say mistrust, between the citizens and the government. Whatever the government may announce, people discount it. And they go exactly the opposite of what they're saying. If the government says our, current account deficit has gone down, they will say, yeah, what have you done? You have compressed imports. That's not a big deal. But they don't realize that unless you reduce your current account deficit from $19 billion to $6 billion, nobody in earth, not even Pakistanis or foreigners, would ever put in a pie in Pakistan because they don't know whether you would have the repayment capacity with this high current account deficit. But we dismiss that because it is coming from the government. Actually, just a reflection of the huge mistrust we have. My third audience is at the firm level. Now, all of you are either independent professionals or you work for the companies. There is now a realization, when I was at the World Economic Forum last year, where a lot of chief executives of the multinational corporations say, what is the purpose of our existence as a multinational corporation? That was never a question which was debated. It was profit maximization. The bottom line is what drives the firm. But today you have at least a realization and an awakening that there is life beyond profits. So the buzzword today is the triple bottom line: people, profits, and planet. Therefore, you have to change your metrics of evaluating the firm. Now, a lot of firms take great pleasure. Oh, we have the ethical values in our mission statement. Excuse me. Oh, yes, we have a code of ethics. We have the corporate social responsibility. Excuse me, I've got a bit congested chest. And we have corporate governance, which has been prescribed by the ACCA. Now you tick mark all of those, and you feel very happy that you have done the ethics code and you are complied with. But ladies and gentlemen, is that what is happening? We are under-invoicing, over-invoicing, declaring the wrong values, in connivance with the professionals who are in their firm. It's not only the sales or the owners who are doing it. They're doing it with the help of the professionals. So you have a beautiful code of ethics and corporate governance and you have complied with, but this country has been losing money through bribery, payments, payments, and all kind of financial and economic crimes. That's happening. So how do you reconcile this beautiful mission statement and also the compliance with the actual outcomes? You have even drugs are being manufactured which are spurious. And in connivance with the drug inspector, most of them are millionaires today. You sell them, not realizing that what damage you're doing to that person who is sick and who needs the genuine drug. You have food adulteration. You're going around and becoming a burden on the society because the health costs either are borne by the state, or the health costs are being borne by you. So your own health and disposable incomes are reduced because of the activities of the other firms from whom you're buying these goods and services. So let's not pretend that by writing a beautiful code of ethics and tick marking the code of corporate governance and giving 1% of our profits for the corporate social responsibility, we have done our job. You have to walk the talk again. You have to practice what you're preaching. So that's at the firm level. And the fourth is at the individual level. And this is what I used to tell my students at the beginning of the term as they came in, and at the end of the term when they were going out after graduation. That a professional, which we want to transform you into a professional, has to have 4 attributes. If you don't have the 4 attributes, you're not a professional. One is, of course, competence in your own domain. So you are an ACCA member or you are a CFA member, you should be coming up to the standards of competence set by your professional bodies. The second is your character, which includes your integrity as a part of that character. And you will come across a situation where you put a tender out for procuring some goods, and your wife is admitted to a private hospital and she's struggling for life and death. And one of the companies come to you and says, we will take care of all the expenses of your wife's disease. And you will say, oh, I have to save, and this is the only infraction I'm going to do. Ladies and gentlemen, that one infraction ever done in your life creates a chain, and it's not going to stop. And what you have done, you have lost your reputation. And once you have lost your reputation, you are not going to progress. Short-term gains, you can. But long-term, you will be exposed and you will never be able to rise to the top positions because this one infraction has actually completely ruined your prospects. This is the ethical dilemma which we teach as case studies. Third is a commitment. If you're just a 9-to-5 jobs that I've moved, that paper and I've written that letter and I've phoned that, without realizing what is the cumulative effect of your efforts for that day. If you don't have that kind of commitment, then I don't think you will ever be able to become a good professional who can rise in their industry or in the private sector or the government sector. So sense of commitment and passion, if it is missing, then you're not professional. And fourth one is compassion. Compassion means that you are a lucky individual having got best education in the country. And 92% of your cohorts never get a chance to go to the university or college. It is your responsibility to help them, to look after them, and not dismiss it. Oh, I've done so well. Why do I care for others? These inequalities in the society, these disparities where Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad have only 5% poor, while Avaran and Musa Khel have 95% poor, is not something in which social capital can be sustained. So if you're missing compassion, then I don't think you are a professional. So the bottom line, to conclude, is that was a struggle for establishing ethics as a day-to-day manifestation of your own practices goes up to the macro level, the government level, the firm level, and individual level. Now, a lot of people say to me, oh, we have self-regulation. But I went to ICAP once, and I asked them, how many people have you actually debarred from the profession for unethical practices? None. Oh, we have sent it to the High Court. We have to do that. But have you taken any action? When I was governor, we categorized all the accounting firms into three categories, A, B, and C. And in one A category was one of the big four. And I found that they had done malfeasance in certifying the accounts of a bank, which I finally, closed down. And we debarred them from auditing any bank in Pakistan. But the repercussions were not limited only to the banks. Others also got wind. So they lost, their markets in non-banking sector also. So unless you have a reward and penalty structure, self-regulation, I'm sorry to say, is not going to work. And then you complain, well, we have so much regulation. If you take the responsibility as an ethical person, I can assume the PMDC, that you have people sitting in the regulatory body of PMDC, and they're saying, oh, the private medical college, it may not have any hospital, but it can be, given accreditation. You have the Pakistan Bar Association, which is also a self-regulatory body. And look at the behavior of some of the lawyers. Have they taken any action against them? So this is the bottom line. It comes from within yourself, not from outside. If you are not convinced yourself that you will face difficulties, but you will persist with the practice of highest ethical values and integrity, and no shortcuts in order to become rich overnight, which is our main motivation in this country, then you may have many such events every year, but this will not really help you, the country, or the humankind. Thank you very much.